Because there is no plan B is the slide, and that is our position and our corporate position in response to the situation that you so eloquently outlined in the previous address. I am, as it says there, the Director of Plan A, Corporate Responsibility and Sustainable Business for Marks & Spencer. I'm also a trustee of the Building Research Establishment. I sit on the Business Advisory Board for LWEC, which is the UK Research Council's response to living with environmental change. And I am a director of BSR in San Francisco, which is an international corporate responsibility membership organization, of which the bulk of the large consumer goods industries globally are members. But today I speak to you in my role as Marks & Spencer. You are probably aware of where we came from. 1884, Marks & Spencer started the business, a product of the Industrial Revolution. We started in Leeds, and for that time we have been synonymous both with corporate trust and responsibility and also the use of science to drive advancement. So whether that was the mass use of Lycra, so you got clothes that fit, or the first UK business to put sell-by dates on products in any scale, then that's what you have come to expect from our business. We use John Beddington's simple perfect storm description to encapsulate everything that I think has been said, certainly the time I've been in the room. And that the world population rise from 6 to 8 billion and upwards to 9, the demand for food that population and a developing and a more affluent population is demanding, the water and the energy, and that 50% increase in energy before we have decarbonised the existing supply of energy, simply is not tenable in the timescale that is there to see. On top of that, the depletion of oil reserves means that that demand is going to be exacerbated by a huge shortfall in the availability of oil to service that demand. Moreover, as consumption's already been mentioned, the World Wildlife Fund have their One Planet Index, and we're all very much aware that in the West we are far, far exceeding the planetary limits in terms of the amount of consumption that's going on. So we're in a position where, in the Americas, 5 planets worth of resources. Over here in Europe, 3 planets worth of resources. And as you see, as we move east, then thankfully there are other people at the moment that are using less of those resources. But, and it's a big but, there is an extreme social injustice in that graph, and you are talking about an East that is developing increasingly rapidly. So what's that leading to? And I'm sure that has been discussed as part of the conference this week, that every indicator you look at suggests that we're heading to some form of crisis. And you may not be able to read those graphs, but it almost doesn't matter. Loss of tropical rainforest, CO2 concentration, population, northern hemisphere average service temperature, species extinctions, water use, paper use, car ownership. They're all going in one way. And what's quite scary for me is that the scale along the bottom of the graph isn't particularly long. We're only at 1800 here. This is not a big graph. We don't see that as tenable in the future. So what's that got to do with us? We are a purveyor of food, principally in the UK, and clothing in the UK and overseas. And the enormous scale of some of the issues that are being discussed is sometimes quite difficult to translate into the immediate consumerism of today. Well, as we see it, and this was discussed, and this slide's from the World Economic Forum, the consumer goods industry section, there is a direct conflict at the moment between planetary limits and individual consumers' needs, desires, and expectations. Many people will accept the macro discussion, but when it comes down to their own behaviours, their own aspirations for their own children and their own families, then there is an extreme conflict. And so for us, we are striving to begin to understand what sustainable consumption looks like. How do we meet the needs desires and expectations of 9 billion people on a planet when the resources are clearly constrained. And very much where we are at the moment, and if you look at industry's first response to sustainability, it very much comes from under that line. It's out of view of the customer. It's been about sustainable supply chain, it's been about raw materials, it's been about manufacturing. And the area that the customer sees has been very much about more of the same. Further development of what probably is easiest described as the American dream. And if you look at the middle market that's emerging in India and China, it aspires to have everything that their Western counterparts have and have had before them. So for us, the opportunity is twofold. One, how do you begin to drive much more sustainable development of goods, services, agriculture and food? And secondly, how do you begin to shape consumer demand to begin to articulate a new norm? So for us, that came back to 5 or 6 years ago, some first early steps into beginning to understand the issues that were involved in our business and beginning to communicate a little more effectively some of the steps that our business had gone to. And whether that was about health, whether that's about animal welfare, whether that's sustainable raw material sourcing, we had a campaign that we called Look Behind the Label. And it began to get a degree of resonance with some of those interested customers. So by the time we got to 2007, and the issues of climate change were really hitting the mainstream media, then for us, we decided it was time to really take the lead and go on the front foot with an all-encompassing environmental and social plan. Simply called Plan A, because we don't believe, as the previous speaker articulated, that there is a Plan B. It covers 5 key areas: climate change, waste, raw materials, fair partner, which is the people and social pillar, and health. And we set this plan because we set 5 years, which finishes this year, 100 things that we needed to change in our organisation. And it involves our 35,000 product lines. It therefore involves 2,000 factories, 20,000 farms, 1.7 million workers in our supply chain, the 75,000 employees and 21 million customers that we serve each week, and the thousands of raw materials that go into developing the product offer that we make. And that has meant that we've done a number of things. I'll come to some of the supply chain improvements, but more lately, and we've just extended this further with our shopping campaign, is to begin to look at how we close the loop on what basically is a linear system at the moment. Grow, harvest, manufacture, use, dispose. And certainly from clothing, which is our core market in the UK, there are 1 billion items of clothing go to landfill every year. That's about 9,500 every 5 minutes. So 9,500 items of clothing have gone to landfill in the 5 minutes that I've been talking to you. This clearly isn't tenable. Our largest raw material is cotton. It's often grown in water-stressed parts of the world by subsistence farmers and uses large quantities of pesticides to control infestation. Increasingly, that land is in competition for foodstuffs. So for us, it's about beginning to change both mindsets in the West and also the way we begin to develop products. So this initiative has been running for 3 years now. We've just extended it further. We've had about 3 million customers participate in this, 11 million garments back to Oxfam, and they've raised somewhere in the region of £4.5 million as a result of that. It's also given us the confidence to set our agenda just last week and call all consumers to bring something back when they buy something new, with an ambition now that if we sell 400 million garments in any given year, we want 400 million garments back, and we will ensure they are reused or recycled. And here you can see just the development of that. Last week, Mark Bolland and Joanna Lumley launched the shopping campaign. Those buildings are covered in 5 minutes worth of UK landfill. It is amazing that in an industrialized society that has done huge amounts of work to ensure that every element can be removed from a motor car at the end of its life, similar work hasn't been done for some of the most regularly used garments that we are all involved in every day. We've also extended it to things like hangers. We recycled 150 million hangers last year rather than give them away. And of course that changes the dynamic of labour. If you make new hangers, you need fairly capital-intensive machines, factories with very few people in. If you resort hangers, you need to provide jobs for people to sort hangers. We've also begun to tackle a criticism that's often leveled at consumer goods industries, which is about packaging. And in the last 5 years, we've reduced our clothing packaging by 50%, and we've reduced our food packaging by 20%. On top of that, many of you will know we started charging for carrier bags 3 years ago. The consumer responded extremely positively. So with the introduction of the 5p charge, the usage went down by 80%. That's some 400 million bags a year for the last 3 years we've not been giving out. Moreover, it's enabled us to use garment over bags from the clothing industry to make the carrier bags that we do use. And I'm just fresh back from a beach in Shoreham, where we reinvest the profits from the carrier bags we do sell with the World Wildlife Fund on fisheries protection, with the Marine Conservation Society on beach cleaning, and with the National Schools Partnership on an education programme with schools. And there are 10,000 people, despite the weather, on beaches this week with our colleagues from stores, understanding and learning about the marine environment and cleaning our beaches. There's a chap there without a beard. Before we gave the money to World Wildlife Fund, we have greened 1,000 play spaces in urban centres up and down the country. And that was from the first 3 years of carrier bag charging. This year we've now moved it into the marine projects. And that's some of the marketing collateral from the marine projects. What's also telling is that this approach to sustainable business development is having a real impact on, one, the issues we face. It's building reputation. It's motivating our people. It's stimulating innovation as we have to reinvent our supply chains. It's opening up new markets for us. And I'm now responsible for M&S Energy, and anybody wants their home insulating, either loft or cavity wall, I can offer you it for free, subject to certain restrictions. And it's delivering us financial return. And what do I mean when it's making a difference? Well, we've cut our carbon emissions. These figures are actually 14, 15 months out of date, so it's considerably higher than that. Our energy use per square foot has improved by 28% in the last 5 years. We've offered free insulation, and insulation was measured to every one of our 70,000 staff, both loft and cavity wall. We've reduced clothing and food packaging, as I've said. We've increased the percentage of electricity we buy from green sources to 100%, and 20% of that now comes from nominated sources, where we worked with our farmers and food factories to install wind, hydro or anaerobic digestion in order to create green energy. We've reduced our food waste by 1/3, and all our food waste now is backhauled and is, through the process of anaerobic digestion, used to generate energy which we buy back for our stores. We've used the equivalent of 27 million 2-litre plastic bottles to make recycled polyester. 700 disadvantaged people a year are involved in our Marks and Start programme, which is about getting those marginalised in society back into work. We're generating £25 million for charities each year, principally cancer charities that relate very closely to our customer base. So we're one of the biggest supporters of breakthrough breast cancer in the UK. And we've increased the percentage of our wood from sustainable sources to 84%. And when I say wood, I'm not just talking about the garden furniture we sell. I'm talking about all wood and wood-based products, including packaging, marketing collateral, decor, paper, till rolls, the whole gambit. And we've launched a Wenboing website for our staff. And they are just a tiny proportion of the progress we've made in the last 5 years. We have a business case that underpins that says this isn't counterintuitive to a commercial organisation, this is driving business return. And you can see there some of the things. This 70 million again is 14 months out of date. We're just with the auditors at the moment to get this year's figures. It has gone up again this year. But it demonstrates very clearly that there is not a conflict between creating a commercial business and doing the right thing to deal with the issues that we face as a society. And we see this as a journey. Very much that in the 30s it was called employee welfare, then philanthropy, community investment, then the buzzword in the 2000s was corporate social responsibility. We believe we're going on from that to Plan A, increasingly to just how we do business, so that our ambition is to create a business that is carbon positive, wastes nothing, is regenerative to environments, and has a positive effect on people's lives wherever it touches them. When we've achieved that, we believe what we'll have created is a truly sustainable business. It touches everything we do, and I couldn't not show a picture of a store given that we're in the Reba building. We are building increasing numbers of green stores now that have lots and lots of developments that drive their energy use down and provide a shopping environment that we would all recognise, but are considerably more efficient. The same is true of factories. This isn't a holiday home. This is a lingerie factory in Sri Lanka. I've been fortunate enough to visit it. As you can see, it was built out over the lake rather than filling the lake in and building a tin shed on the top. It uses about half the power of a normal factory. The working environment is fantastic, and it is completely off-grid. It's run on solar and small-scale hydro. This is a 30-year-old factory in Sri Lanka. We've done a eco job on this factory too, and as you can see there, it's an extremely bright and well-lit place to be. In fact, other than LED needlepoint lighting, there are no field lights in that store. And the factory owner has told me that as it was a 30-year-old factory and they went through the development, when they finished that development, the Sri Lankan authorities turned up at the factory thinking there was fraud going on because the energy use had dropped by half, which is fantastic. And it's not just in Sri Lanka. Our upholstery furniture is all made in the UK, and this is one of our eco factories in Wales. So if you buy a sofa from Marks & Spencer, you can be assured it's made in the UK in an eco factory. We're exporting our store model. This is one of our stores in Shanghai that is increasingly performing to the same standards as those eco stores in the UK. And of course, you may well have seen these on the road. We now have 441 of these aerodynamic trailers. 10% more in them, and they're 10% more efficient. And that's delivering a 30% increase, along with rescheduling of vehicles. We're taking a quarter of our vehicles off the road. We're seeing a 30% increase in fuel efficiency. But sometimes this is also about communication, making it real for people, as what we hope we're doing with swapping. And it's interesting to see that when you put two photographs out in the press, which one gets printed? I'll leave you to decide that. What's really exciting is getting in the heads of people. And this is one of our trailers. This is a Driver of the Month's trailer. And if you're a driver for Marks & Spencer, you get one of those white trailers, and it's a DAF XS or something. This is a DAF XF with a better stereo, leather seats, and you keep the truck all to yourself. You don't share it. And they get Driver of the Month for many things, but one of them is fuel efficiency. And so the Driver of the Month that drives the most efficient truck that month gets a super luxury truck for the following month, and it certainly drives behaviour. So what I want to do now is conclude by saying we are extremely aware of the issues that face us all of society. We are clear in our responsibility to make efforts to improve both the performance of our own organisation and to make it easier for the consumer to live a more sustainable lifestyle. We're 5 years into a journey which we believe will be a very long journey, but we're extremely encouraged by the progress we've been able to make, extremely encouraged by how the consumer has begun to respond, and we believe there is lots we can still do.